Zach Brown grew up here in Gallatin County and graduated from Bozeman High School as valedictorian in 2009. From 2014 to 2020, Zach served 3 terms in the Montana House of Representatives, while also doing a substantial amount of nonprofit work. Recently, he's been elected as the Gallatin County Commissioner and is ready to make some difficult decisions.
I think my journey into public service probably started with my parents. My parents were small business owners in Bozeman growing up. They ran retail businesses in downtown Bozeman. And so I think I participated, worked for minimum wage for my parents back when minimum wage was like $3 an hour for my parents. Since basically I think my first paycheck, I was probably 6. And I watched my parents invest in the community around them. They helped start the Downtown Bozeman Downtown Business Association, the Christmas Stroll. They were active in the Chamber of Commerce and always trying to support schools and MSU and nonprofits with their work and their income and their business services. And so I grew up with that model. And then when I was in high school, I was really involved with student clubs. I actually was running the Bozeman High Recycle Club, and so I was really involved in and interested in sustainability and environmental issues. So then I took that with me to college. My interest in sustainability then went to student groups, which led me to uh, kind of participating as an advocate, I guess, in the 2013 or 11 and then 13 legislative sessions in Helena. And during the 2013 session, I was student body president at the University of Montana. And so I guess that transition from student club to student government then led me to state government. And fast forward 2 years after that, I was living in Washington, D.C., uh, doing research, academic research at Georgetown University. I was trying to move home to Bozeman, and I got a random phone call from a current or a sitting legislator at that time asking if I was interested in running for the legislature. So I asked my parents what they thought. They said, "Hell no, don't do that." So of course that made me want to do it, and so I moved home, found a job that was tolerant of me serving in the legislature. Served 6 years in the legislature. Sort of continued to just invest in my love for public service, I guess, and public policy. And then when it was time for me to move away from that, um, this and change jobs, this opening on the county commission came up. I happened to live in the district. My wife decided about the same time that she wanted to run for the legislature since I wasn't going to do that anymore, and so the pieces all just kind of came together. So here I am for the next 6 years, serving my community as a county commissioner. There, there are so many hoops in my new job as a commissioner that I don't even know what they are yet. I'm still so new. I'm on month 3. Um, I think my first run into public service, a sort of resistance that I ran up against was a certain percentage of people out there weren't interested in me being involved. There was kind of this idea that I was too young, and that I didn't have enough life experience and different things like that. I was 23 when I first filed to run for the legislature. So that just overcoming the people's perception of my age and capabilities was an initial obstacle. Just got around that by working my butt off and showing up over and over again, and let the results of my work speak for itself, I think. But in my current job, it's hard to even say. I mean, we're our primary responsibility. We're sort of the county commission is like the 3-person board of directors for county government. There's almost 600 county employees, quite a large budget, and our primary responsibility within that organization, beyond making policy and making land use decisions and administering some level of staff decisions and resource decisions, is that we set the budget for everyone, and we're just beginning that budget process. And I'm sure there are countless roadblocks, such as a finite amount of resources available to us, and the wish list of projects that people want funded and so on and so forth is much bigger than the amount of money that we actually have available to us. But that's a big, long process, and I'm just at the very beginning of it. And this is my first time through a budgeting process. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I have a lot to learn about that whole process as a new guy. There's just so much that comes along with that. And in my first 3 months on the job, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with people that are upset about the growth, upset about the field next to their home getting subdivided, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are a lot of challenges that come with our expanding population, but I think I come from a sustainability and environmental policy background, and I care a lot about the health of our natural resources. But one of the perspective shifts that I've had just in the last couple of months is realizing that if we're just only thinking about growth in negative terms and how we slow it down, we're only going to make our housing crisis worse. I didn't love microeconomics, but I remember the basic concepts of supply and demand. And our housing supply is so far below demand at the moment that we have a completely unattainable, out of control housing market. So your working class people have a really hard time getting started in this county and in this valley in particular. And the only thing you can really try and do to get it closer to even is by increasing the supply of housing. And so I think we have a responsibility as a local government to help get more housing units on the market, and help facilitate some development of housing opportunities that are attainable. We have to look at our growth policy. We have to look at our subdivision review policy. We have to look at our relationship with cities of Belgrade and Bozeman and other places to figure out how we can accelerate the development of more housing, and hopefully the development of housing that's somewhat affordable for working class people. That issue in our culture is what stresses me out and keeps me up at night more than anything else. I think our culture around civics and politics is pretty, not broken because it's not permanently broken, but we're not doing very well. People look at each other who vote differently or have different values than them and think that they're evil, bad people these days. They look at politicians that they didn't vote for and they're just disgusting, awful people who are trying to do harm. And the reality is we're all a bunch of human beings that are doing the best we can. We may have different conclusions, but we're all wrestling with the same issues. And when we villainize and demonize each other, and that's both with elected officials doing that to each other, but also just voters perpetuating and allowing that type of behavior from elected officials and then doing it to each other, man, the results are not good. And we just have to crawl our way out of that. And I think, to me, we all can start to turn that ship around just by being human beings to each other and being curious about people who have different values and beliefs than we do, trying to be kind and patient and unplug from social media, because social media is a dumpster fire of human interaction. People are just rude and mean to each other because they're behind a screen. They're reactionary. They don't think through what they're saying, or there's very little room for nuance or complexity. Whereas if you sit down over a cup of coffee or a beer with somebody that you disagree with or have different values, then you can have a conversation like two human beings and wrestle with all the nuance and your differences. But in social media, you can just throw some angry, mean sentence at someone and then turn off your computer and leave it there. In a very broad sense, as a county commissioner, we spend a lot of time making decisions about land use policy and developments. So reviewing subdivisions, reviewing variances to zoning regulations, and just thinking about land use policy at the local level. I hope we can approach that very complicated work over the next 6 years of my term in a way that ultimately sets up our community and our development community and homeowners for success, and that we're at least proud of the type of development that's coming. Um, I don't think we can or should try and stop development or growth. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but we should try and develop in a way that minimizes negative harm, um, and maximizes sort of the the benefits of growth, and meets a vision of a community that we're all proud of. And our roads and our transportation infrastructure affects wildlife habitat. And so thinking about how, as a county commissioner and as county government, we can work with the state and the federal agencies to identify important wildlife migration corridors that cross major road infrastructure, and then invest in infrastructure that allows wildlife to safely pass um, underneath roads or around roads, or figure out how they get from one place to another across an interstate or a highway without running into a semi truck. Um, and I think the motivation is that at its core, local government is very close to the ground. We're providing direct services that impact people's well-being and economic well-being and social well-being, and just community welfare every day. We're providing services like grading and paving roads, or um, thinking about our public health during a global health pandemic. So the most rewarding part is getting to see problems and then trying to solve them, and using our collective community resources to try and do that.
After talking with Zach, it became clear that each member of the community plays such an important role, and everyone has the ability to invoke change as long as they're motivated enough. Zach teaches us that despite facing difficult roadblocks, it is always possible to achieve your goals. He also shows that age is just a number and that you don't have to have tons of life experience to make a change. He's been an important part of shaping our culture here in Bozeman, and is a strong advocate for ridding our community of the nasty polarization we see everywhere today. He thinks that if we all come together as a collective culture, we can progress into a society where we don't see such separation.